We're going to start recording at the beginning instead of in the middle today.
Novel thing.
What a shock. Okay, just to let you know, I used to be in sales. It's not a pretty thing. I'm so ashamed. But there were a couple of things that we learned when we were in sales, and retail sales are different than most other type of person-to-person sales. So people come into the store because there's something they want to buy. And they're always looking for something. Like you go into a car lot, they will tell you that they're wandering around and they're looking and they're talking, and then the salesman comes up and says, "Hi, what are you looking for today?" And they're thinking, "Oh, I was looking to buy an elephant." "No, what do you think I'm here for?" "I'm here to get a car." And they say, "Well, what kind of car would you like?" And then you tell them, and then they show you something that is completely out of your price range, and the wrong color and the wrong style and the wrong size. And then you have to convince them that no, you don't want to sell the car that they can get the bonus on. You know, you don't want them to sell you something just because that gives them a bonus. You want a car that you want. Yes, we're looking for a minivan because we have 5 kids. No, we don't like bright purple. No, we want something that's got some type of mileage so that you're not worried about spending $200 every time you fill it up. And lately it's been getting close to that. But so it takes a while, and you haggle about the price, and then you haggle about the trade-in, you haggle about this, you haggle about that, and finally you find the car that you want. Or you leave and you go to Climax and wait for the vending machine to give you the car that you want. But generally, you're going in looking for something. They don't grab people off the street and say, "You know, I saw your car driving by here. You need an upgrade." They won't tell you that. They just don't do that. You go into a store to buy clothes, and if you spend too much time in one section, then somebody will come and ask you if you can use some help. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But these are all situations where the customer comes to you. What about when you go to the customer? What if they don't even know they want what you've got? That is one of the things that they do on television advertising. So if you take a look at a television ad and you see an ad for McDonald's, you have just eaten your supper, you have full, you're fine, there's nothing else that you want, and they will put that great big sizzling burger on the screen with the fries and the pop with the little bubbles flying out of it. And then you think, "I'm not really hungry," so you say no. And then somebody else who may not have eaten yet is going, "Oh, I know what I want for supper tonight." And then they go. But you're going to get like 2% of the people will watch that ad and go in. Have you watched the ads that they have for the pharmaceuticals? So, all right, yes, I understand you are depressed. And if you take our product, you'll get more depressed and sick and nauseous and diarrhea and hives and boils, and your eyebrows will fall out, but you'll feel better. And you say, "Oh, I must have some of that." And they've got all of this stuff that can horribly go wrong with it, but they're selling stuff. People are buying that. They're asking their doctors about it. Take a look at, what was that? There was a coffee commercial where they go on an airplane and somebody says, "Would you like some more coffee?" And the guy says, "Sure." And then she says to herself, "John never asked for a second cup of coffee." you know, and they think maybe it's your coffee, and then they say, I must get this brand and make it better. Let's see here. Oh, where were the other commercials where they tell you that you're not socially acceptable because, you know, you might smell like a human, you know, that put those arms down. You want to smell like flowers, right? You have bees flying around you. So things that you didn't know you needed. Somebody's talking to you and they back off just a little bit, then you're checking to make sure that you've got your breath is clear. So you're not, am I offending somebody by the way my breath smells? You know, am I offending somebody by the shirt I'm wearing, or is the fashion to last year? Yeah, they're selling stuff that you don't need, but they make you think you need it. Where would we put the recruiting campaigns that we were using for our clubs? Where would we put those on a scale of used car salesman to retail salesman to TV salesman? Where would you put them on the scale? What kind of people are we working with?
I'd say the TV salesman, because we're trying to convince people to join, to come in, and they might not even recognize that they need it.
Exactly. Yeah. Are we going to them or are they coming to us?
Lots of times we're going to them. Luckily, sometimes they do come to us.
Sometimes they do. We like it when they do that. Okay. So when you're going to talk to somebody about Toastmasters, we have to find out what they want out of life. And you can get some idea about what that, just in conversation. They're people you know, right? You're not going to go up to some stranger and say, here, fog this mirror, come to a meeting. That's not going to work so well. But if you see the same person at the register every time you go to the grocery store and you ask them, you know, what are you in school, or how are you doing, or how did you get the night shift at No Frills? And they will tell you, and then they will give you an opportunity to offer them something. You say, you know, if you're going to school, do you have to get up and do presentations or anything like that to get a good grade, especially if they're in the communications? You say, wouldn't it be great if there was a place you could practice? And then you have to be quiet. Because if that suddenly goes, oh, that would be a good idea. Now, will you get them every time? About 2%. Okay, but how about people you know? How do you tell them what a great thing Toastmasters is? You can't actually tell people, because telling pushes. So you have to ask. What kind of questions would you ask somebody that you know that would make them think that maybe they could work on their speaking or leadership skills?
One of the questions could possibly be is basically spill in regards to how it has helped you, and then turn around and just ask them, would you be willing to come and join us for one meeting so that you can see for yourself?
Okay.
what it can possibly do for you. Like minds think alike.
Like minds think alike. One of the things that you have to watch out for when you ask somebody like that is, wouldn't you like to join us? Because that indicates that maybe you're looking for members. Wouldn't you like to visit us?
Okay.
Might be a little less scary.
Okay.
Okay. So wouldn't you like to visit us and see what kind of stuff we can do? All right. What's another way to ask somebody that you know to at least come and take a look? We remember that we're pulling, not pushing.
If you're saying that we know them, perhaps we know that they're getting ready to do a presentation. Perhaps we know that something is coming up that they would have to do, like a speech at a wedding or something like that, and use that as a tool to help them understand that, especially if they're like, I don't want to do this, I'm fearful, I can't, and possibly say, I have this really wonderful, I'm a part of this program that is very helpful, has been helpful to me. Why don't you come and visit us and see if this would be something that could possibly help you?
That is a very good way to do that. Very good. Okay. Why do you think that would work so well?
First of all, we have a relationship. And that relationship, whether it's a close or far away relationship, we know each other. And I more than likely never put them in a position where they could get scammed. And so that they know that whatever I'm offering would be something that would be at least worthwhile to come through and see at their leisure. Give them the options of when you're meeting, and if those don't work, other clubs and say, hey, I know another club that will work on, you have this on Wednesday, you have that on blah, blah, blah. How about us going to one that is at such and such a date at such and such a time, and I'll come with you.
That's always a good thing when you offer to come with them. Doesn't work on Zoom though.
That's true. Well, no, yes, it does, because of the fact that if I don't say that I'll be there, they may not show. But if I'm going to be there, they'll be more
likely to show up, not
to show up. Yes.
Yeah, because they don't want to scare you away. I like my friend Cynthia. I don't want to leave her hanging. Right? Okay, so yeah, in Zoom, if you're going to be online, then you got to make sure that they have that assurance that you're going to be there when they show up.
Right.
Right. Okay. Yes, that's a good thing to remember. Okay. What kind of situations do you think would get people to the point where they realize they need help?
Have an answer. If it's really more pertinent to the previous question, sort of. It occurred to me recently. It doesn't reflect on this quite as well. We can say the Arthur Murray Dance Club or the Arthur Murray Dance Studio of public speaking. As you mentioned giving a speech or a toast at a wedding. Arthur Murray Dance Studio is where people go if they are going to be doing the whole first dance thing, but they don't know how to dance. So just the problem. Then again, they don't care. They're not accountable. Well, they are to an extent. If they can't keep students, right. We want to keep people for as long as possible. Are a lot more about keeping people. But so all right, go continue with what you were saying. I'm done.
Okay, it's kind of hard to hear you every once in a while there, Amy. So when you're, we were watching one of the guys who's an elder in our church who had to get up and read scriptures, and he had a death grip on the lectern, and he was barely talking and his eyes never came up off the paper. And he had some problems pronouncing some of the words. And the way that it works in this church is that this person has to read the scriptures every week for a month. So you could say, hey, you know, we have a way that maybe you could practice and get some feedback from people who do lots of speaking and help you overcome some of your nervousness. Would you be interested? And he might say yes. He might say no. Okay, but we got to first get them to the point where they're asking. Did you have something, Mark?
No.
Okay. All right. When is another situation that you would recognize somebody is needing help and they're not quite sure how to ask you for it?
You have to observe someone doing public speaking like you just said. Where else might you observe someone trying to do it? Work, at church, you have to seek these out, maybe. Like going to a community meeting or a hearing, that's motive.
Okay. All right. So we've got situations where people need our help and we can offer it. And then we have other situations where you have to ask enough questions to find out if they're ever in a situation where they're going to need to speak. So for instance, like what you were saying, toasts at weddings, eulogies, briefings at work. And I know that there are times like every Monday morning where some people have to give a status report to their team leaders. And some will say, well, I followed the list and we got the list done, and they're done. And somebody else just rambles on and on and on, and they don't know how to stop. They get to the end of what they're thinking and they don't know how to say, well, that's all, or that's my report. Next, you know, they don't understand how to be brief. And so those are people that may need some help getting things organized. Have you ever been at one of those 1 hour meetings that last for 2.5 hours? Well, the person that's running that meeting may want to know how to keep it an hour. Or maybe you can work with some of the people that are going to the meeting, and you're sitting in there next to them. You say, you know what, if we kind of subversively took over the meeting by just handing out agendas, know what we're going to talk about ahead of time, then maybe he'd get the hint. And you would say, hey, I can run off an agenda for you. Or would you like to learn how to do that? I could show you. In fact, we've got a whole crew that would be willing to help you run a really good, efficient meeting and get it done in less than an hour. And he'd go, oh, I must come. Does that ever happen? Well, sometimes. There are a lot of places that we can be looking amongst our personal connections for people who might be able to benefit. But we remember, you're not selling to them. You are asking them, because we got to pull instead of push. Because if you try to push somebody into something, they're going to dig in their heels and back off every time. Okay, so what if you say, oh, I've got this wonderful group and we've been having so much fun. We do these meetings and listen to these great speeches about all kinds of neat stuff. And we've got table topics where we can just talk off the cuff for a couple of minutes without any preparation. And okay, and that comes out like my little dragon back here, and they're going back off and run for the hills. How can we ask them without giving too much away? What kind of things do you say about your meeting? Remember, how do you introduce Toastmasters to people?
Normally, I start what I gained from it and why I am there still now. I started my journey in Toastmaster 2012, and now it is 2020. So how the transformation has come in my way, in thinking, in personal life as well as in my personal life.
Mhm.
and professional life as well. Now, wherever I am going to meet people or in any club, other than Toastmaster also, when I speak something and when I share something with them, I get appreciation and they come back to me, one or two guys. So that is the way you have to tell what is the benefit of it. I'm not telling, okay, you said them, but it is a very, it's a very slow process. I mean, every process is slow, but it depends upon individual, what he want to take away from that.
Mhm.
So transformation is the thing which we can emphasize on the people. You get transformation. I mean, in this way, in Toastmaster, one thing, or there are so many things, but I take you one example, self-discipline. Because it teaches you a self-discipline, when to start, where to start, how to start, and be in the point, not just saying, and just end of the day, when you are mixing up everything.
Right.
So it is the focus thing where individual need what. It is a why we do meditation, why we focus thing. Meditation is a thing that when we want to focus ourselves, we want to bring peace to us, we want to have a silence in ourselves. So that is the thing, a transformation comes because in the whole process of 1 hour meeting or 1.5 meeting, start from the sergeant at arm to president's speech or to, uh, TMOD, and then the prepared speeches. Every step has different kind of thing which we have a takeaway. So if we as an individual want to learn something, then only we learn. And there is a saying, only listening and keeping yourself will not make a difference unless until you come forward and share. We do the things, we keep it with us. We don't share. When we share, we get to know that, yeah, we know this thing. We are good at this. So our hidden things come up when we are into the Toastmaster. So if overall you see, I mean, I tell about my transformation in the journey of in development. Um, Recently, this is a season where the contest are going on. To get 10 people or 1 people or 2 people is very difficult. And when you are organizing event coordinator, you have to bring at least 10 people. You have to break your head to find out the chief judge when there are so many contests are going on. So what it teaches us, it is a patience and your capability to talk to the people, to convince them, okay, this is needed, I need this, your help. Voluntarily, you're not paying them. You pay them, then also people doesn't come. But in Toastmaster, we are not paying them, we are just spreading the word.
That's right.
So
So one
that
of
is
the
the
things
thing.
that we're looking at is if you were to describe Toastmasters as a transformational experience, and people would look at you like, what, a what, a what? How would you like to raise your awareness and bring in more consciousness of the world around you and within you? And, well, what does that look like? I said, what does that look like to you? What would you like to change for the better? What would you like to learn that would give you an advantage over the person that you are now? Where do you want to go? Because, yeah, we raise our awareness? Absolutely. You're paying attention to what people are saying and how they're saying it, and the organization of what they're saying, and figuring out, did they plan this speech ahead of time, or are they talking off the cuff? Are they using crutch words because they can't remember, or because their brain hasn't caught up with their mouth? We're being more aware of the way people are saying, and because we develop this awareness on the surface level, how are they saying it? Where are they saying it? Where is it coming from? Then we get to go into a deeper level where, what is the message behind the speech? What is the point? What is the takeaway from this particular speech? What can I get from this meeting that I can apply through the rest of my week, through the rest of my month, the quarter, the year? What can I do that will bring me to another level of awareness? Where else are we going to find something like that? Because everything that we do in the meeting has that type of awareness in there. Whether you're the grammarian and counter and you're listening for specific word usage and correct use of the language and crutch words and stuff like that, or the timer where you are aware of how do they time their speech and where does the climax happen. Climax happens like in the last 30 seconds of the speech, and then they have a close that brings everything together. Then you remember that. If the climax comes like in the first 2 minutes of a 7-minute speech, you're going to forget it before the end of the speech. Makes sense? Okay, so you're aware of the time that this spent, and you're aware of how it's spent, or whether it's invested. And then with the sergeant at arms and all of the other people. They're making sure that the room or that the space is safe and that people are well treated and that people are respected and that they don't feel invisible. And so they bring an awareness of community. And same thing with the people that are leading the educational programs. You know, what are you trying to learn? What are you going to use this for? How can I help you? Everything in every meeting gets down to that level and even further and even further. So people who have been in there and finished their level ones and gotten through their first path maybe, or gotten through the first 3 levels even, they keep coming back, not because they feel like they don't know enough, but because they enjoy this growing process. And they are also addicted to the people that are in the club, which is, could be good, could be bad. How do you go up against somebody that says, what, you're not interested in the most transformational experience you will ever get? What do you think their response to that would be?
Sign me up.
Okay. All right. So when you've got people that say no to you, what kind of excuses do they give? Because we all know that they're excuses, not reasons.
I'm afraid. I don't have time.
I don't have time.
Okay. What else?
How much it gonna cost? I don't have the money.
Okay. What else?
I got other things going on.
Well, duh.
And I don't have time. You know, there's all kinds of excuses, but if they buy into, let me back up. Let me back up in just a second. Before I joined Toastmasters, I went to my first meeting and I had already told myself that I would not join. I'm just doing this for a friend. And that's because Anthony, my husband, who's also Toastmaster, went with me, and we were going because she was a friend, but I had made a mandate that there was no way that I would join Toastmasters because I had no clue what Toastmasters was until I sat there and seen and heard and watched. Oh my God, I need this. And I think a lot of times if we can just get them in the door, they will see that they need it.
So what exactly did you find out that you needed?
Something that I always knew that I needed: communication. To be more proactive in my communication. I mean, I can talk one-on-one, no problem.
Yeah.
But when it came to management at my job, I would shut down.
So were you at a point where you were having to give reports or go to meetings where you would just basically hide in the corner?
I didn't do any hiding in the corner, but these are basically for my reviews. You know, I had wonderful reviews ever since I was there, but it was always about my communication. And I had lack of self-confidence in regards to that, and figured, hey, you know, I'm old now. There's no way that I could make this work.
So
But
when you went to that meeting, what was it that got you to realize that this Was something that
real.
you needed? Was it the speeches? Was it the table topics? Was it the evaluations? What was it that gave you the idea that this organization could help you become more self-aware and self-confident?
Listening to the different people and their own situations. And I squirmed because they're like, I knew that I needed to be able to go into that office, let the door shut and not freeze.
Okay.
So that's what I did. So the mandate that I gave my husband, we're not joining nothing else, went straight out the door.
Yeah. Well, confessions, when I went to Toastmasters for my first meeting, I knew that it was a speaking organization and a way to improve my communications. And I'm probably the only person that has ever joined Toastmasters to learn how to shut up.
And you know, I didn't know.
It doesn't work.
And Rebecca, I didn't realize, because when I heard of Toastmasters, I don't drink and I had no need to toast. That was what was in my head. I don't care what Evelyn or anyone else was saying in regards to it. That was in my head, and it stuck there until the day that I walked in and sat down fuming because I could think of 50 million other things I could be doing right now. And then I started listening and hearing what everybody had to say. That's when it's like, I perked up and I'm like, is this for real? Is this, you know, and then I'm like, okay, sign me up.
There you go. So Mark, what attracted you to come back for a second meeting?
My previous position that I had been in, I did a lot of talking. I did a lot of presentations, like at conferences and things like that. And then I changed jobs and I was no longer out there, you know, facing to the client or out there, you know, people facing. And I needed to keep up that skill. I really found that it was fading away and I wasn't as experienced as I'd like to be. So I went to a meeting. I'd heard about it. I went to a meeting, and my first meeting was not very good because they just ignored me. Yeah, I went in, no one talked to me, no one explained anything, and no one asked me if I liked it or even talked to me. And then I left, and I had a friend tell me more about it. And then I came back for another meeting and they introduced me to the executive. And that's how I got really interested in it. But my first meeting, it was not good.
So what did the getting back in front of the people, did that change anything in your life when you were not having to do that at work?
It made me want to get another job, but I was back into facing the public again. It was something I really missed.
So did you?
Yeah, I did.
There you go. Okay. So, Mark, what made you decide that carrying horns was probably not the only thing that you needed to do in Toastmasters? I rigged him in. I did. I said, oh, can you carry my horns for me? I have to do a demonstration tonight. And he carried my horns.
Actually, that's a good point, but that was actually the second meeting. The first meeting she enticed me to was because of food. It was a speak in the park for the club. But the point, and I think some of you have heard me say this before, one way that, and they actually used to tell people at the company or the organization Rebecca represents part-time, if you want somebody to, and you want to get somebody going with you to a meeting or whatever, ask them to help you with something. And that's actually, although I was a little bit intrigued because I knew a couple of Toastmasters. I actually knew more of them, but I didn't realize they were Toastmasters. But I also had recognized a problem I was having, which being unable to get up in front of people in a formal setting. This was what, 12 or 13 years after I transitioned out of teaching into working tech, computer programming. So I knew there was something that my understanding of Toastmasters could help me with. But what actually got me there and then got me to join, Rebecca asked me, can you help me? I'm giving a presentation tonight and I need somebody to carry props, which our props are fairly big. They're made out of brass, and the ones for that one were some of the trumpets we have. Because the other side of it is we're both musicians. She's better than I am, but that's okay. I enjoy doing it. Not that I've been able to the last couple of years, but it really was. I went to the meeting because she needed help, and consequently I joined Toastmasters because another Toastmaster who was he's our long-time secretary treasurer, and he's the guy, if you get guests in there, he's the guy that talks to them. But he asked me to join, and if I hadn't been asked to come to help somebody, I wouldn't have gone. I wouldn't have been there to be asked to join. So that's one trick you can use is, I could see Amy saying, I have to give a presentation in another month or so at our district conference. Cynthia could be saying the same thing. Could you come and help me so that I can practice it? Come to a meeting today at night. I'm going to practice it, and I want somebody friendly to give me feedback.
Well, I wouldn't even call it a trick. It's an approach maybe, but not a trick, because a trick indicates that possibly you have nefarious purposes. And we do, but we don't tell people that.
And in the food side of it, a good friend of ours, he's approaching 40, but when we first met him, half his life he had been in prison, and he had just shortly before we met him, he had been released, and I think he was on parole. And he asked him why he joined Toastmasters. Well, there really were a couple of things. One, it got him out of his cell, but number two, they served donuts. And he'll always tell you, I went to Toastmasters for the donuts. And you ask him, why'd you go back? He'd say, I went back because of the donuts. You could not get donuts any other way in whatever facility. He was in Iowa someplace, but whatever facility he was in. So, there's little things like that. They're not really tricks, but they're approaches you can use.
Hard to do donuts on Zoom though.
Yeah, donuts on Zoom just don't work too well.
But since then, he has written and published 2 books.
Yeah.
And
I was invited to one of the club meeting of the main club he was in, and they asked me, because they were doing a membership drive meeting, they asked me to talk about benefits of Toastmasters. And they let Eagle Feather, his name's Eagle Feather, they had him speak first. And he got done, and I said, I'm not sure I want to speak. He was that good.
yeah,
But I went up anyway and did it. But I don't know if it got us any members over there or not. But that's that's one of the things I always mention when people ask, how can you get people to come? Well, to get them to join, you need to get them into a meeting. And if you get to the point where you're meeting at least hybrid, you can ask them to come and help you out to do something at the meeting. And then, of course, always remember to ask people to join once they've gotten them there.
If you're on Zoom, you can say, hey, I'm giving a presentation for my club. I'd really like to see a friendly face in the audience.
It's-
And that's a Zoom. They don't know you know all of these people. But the fact is, when you ask them to help you by observing your presentation, they can see a difference in the way they know you and the way they see you. So they may know you as the calm, really under control person who never has a hair out of place. And then you get to the club and you give a really, really funny speech. This happened to one of our members who was a lawyer. And he was every hair in place. And he said, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, today I'm going to talk, and you go, and he was a lawyer. So yeah, right. But he gave this funny speech, had us laughing to the point of tears. And we couldn't believe it was coming from him, because he is the most unfunny, well, second most unfunny person we've ever met. And anybody coming to see him in that situation would have just been surprised as all get out to see him in a different way than what they had ever seen him before, as an arbitrator and a person in family law. They would never picture him as being funny. But oh, I'll tell you what, we are still talking about that speech, and it's been what, 4 or 5 years now since he moved down to Kansas City, at least.
It's about that, yeah.
Yeah.
He was a retired lawyer and he kept bees.
Atheist. So, but okay, so we're in a situation where you can ask a person to come and help you by bringing stuff or by carrying stuff, or you know, I need some cupcakes for this, and I know you make great cupcakes, and I will pay you for the cupcakes, but can you bring them to the meeting, please? Then they bring them to the meeting, and then you say, wouldn't you like to stay? Well, that's one way to do it. Okay. All right. So let's see. In my years as salesman on a one-to-one basis, we learned several different techniques and approaches to people that said, I don't have time. And you say, time for what? Now that is a really loaded question, because no matter what they say, they're wrong. You don't have time for 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week. What if it gained you another promotion? What if you got enough self-confidence that people would consider you a go-to person? Wouldn't that be worth 2 hours a week? What if you could learn something about communication that you don't already know? Wouldn't that be worth 2 hours a week? What if whatever their button is, what if you could learn how to do a more efficient meeting? What if you could get people to see the same way that you see when you're talking about a project or something of the sort that you're having to work at? How do you get it across to them what this project can do for them and what it can do for your company, and possibly get them bonuses? You know, how do you get people on your side when you want to run for office? How do you get whatever their button is? Wouldn't it be worth 2 hours a week to learn a little skill that you might be able to use in all of these different areas. Okay, so I don't have time for, I've got too much on my plate. And you say, if you are going to have to cut something, would you rather cut your work or your family? And then they go, oh, work. Absolutely. How about work or yourself? And they look at you like, oh, well, let me see. They say, do you like to work overtime? No. Yeah, I like the money, but gee, I don't like working past 2 in the morning. No. Okay. All right. See, but if you have to choose between work for someone else and work for yourself, wouldn't you rather have work for yourself? To make yourself a better person, more valuable in the marketplace? And then they have to think, and then you let them think. But you don't let them off the hook. Then you come back to them again. You think, so how much overtime did you have to do this week? How many hours did you spend away from your family that you wanted to spend? Did you miss any birthdays? Now you don't say that outright because that's mean, but you say, what if this could be your way out of that job? What if this could get you into a position where they won't send you all over the globe to do stuff that that you're overqualified to do? You have to get that across to people, right? You have to let them know what you are actually worth, right? What if we could show you how? See? And then you let them think, and then you let them think. Now, this isn't going to work with everybody. But when they say they don't have time, that is an excuse that they use that everybody understands because everybody's busy. All right. So, for instance, when Mark was the district director, he had 2 40-hour jobs going on at the same time. So one he was getting paid for, and one was driving him crazy in running the district. And he found the time to do that. And how many clubs were you in? 4 clubs at the time, and district director 5.
I think I joined the 6th one during that year.
The 6th one you joined there?
Yeah,
While he was in the district director's chair and working 40 plus hours a week at a job that was actually paying him.
Actually, that was a lighter load, probably a lighter workload than the previous 2 years for a couple of reasons. One was because halfway through my program quality director, 2/3 of the way through, we went on to Zoom. So it wasn't running all over around Omaha and Lincoln and such, going to things. It was amazing when I started working for home, which was 2 years ago today in terms of calendar day of the week. I started getting about an hour and a half extra per day to do things because I wasn't driving to and from my workspace. But yeah, it was interesting times, and yeah, it did take a lot of time.
So now that you are slowing down, it's time to come on to Why Not Speak.
Well, I just gave one of my clubs the bad news that I was going to be dropping them.
Okay, then pick us up.
I'm actually looking at one that's based out of the West Coast as a possibility. But I had 2 regular clubs that met on Monday nights. And one was the one I joined originally, and the other one was one I joined after being appointed their coach and getting them back into success, although not necessarily distinguished every year. They're successfully continuing. And I just got to the point where that club, which they meet every Monday night, and I was twice a week or twice a month, I was having to drop out early, but because they don't use their website, that was preventing me from doing much the other Mondays of the week. They sign up meeting roles for the next meeting at the end of the meeting. And by the time they got to the end of the meeting twice a month, I was already at the other club. So that was, it was a tough decision, because they happen to be the oldest club, and they predate the district. They're that old. So I hated to do it, but I felt I had to. And yes, Cynthia, your club is one that I would not mind joining.
We're having another
Rock and
game
roll.
night.
Right.
Another game night, 31st.
I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to
So,
figure.
There's the main problem that people have when they say that they don't have time is that they are taking time away from themselves to do something that isn't moving them along. And if they devote a minimum amount of time, because just both of the community clubs that I belong to meet every other week rather than every week. And the advanced clubs I belong to meet once a month. And the one that Mark is talking about out of the West Coast meets once a week, but they're not even chartered yet. So that one's free. But the idea behind all of these club meetings is that each club that I belong to gives me something different, a different aspect that I have to deal with within myself, something, the perspective, some of the emotional elements that I don't see in some of the other clubs. I find in one of those, and some of the more technical show up in another place, and the interest in science fiction shows up in another place, and the working toward financial, or not financial, but educational goals is another one. And so all of these have a specific purpose in mind that gets me to think in a different way when I'm with them than when I'm on my own. So that's one of the things that as Toastmasters, we can appreciate the different cultures of each of these different clubs, because we've raised our awareness and to pay attention to new things. Well, the one on the West Coast does a Pecha Kucha, and it's Pechakucha, and they show 4 pictures, one at a time, and you've got 20 seconds with each picture to come up with a story, and you have no idea what the next picture is going to be. So it shows an alien standing at a bus stop with a briefcase, and you're looking to start a story with that. And then it shows this bus flying through the air, and now you have to come up with the part of the story about how this bus gets into the air. And then it shows that the bus is going down into a black hole and pops out someplace that has orange beaches and green seas and yellow trees, and then you say, oh, and we're home at last. You know, I've never seen any of that in any of the Toastmasters clubs I've ever been in, and it was really different. But you know, it gets you thinking in different ways, and I'll tell you, you're up on your toes every minute of that club. So when we're working with people that are saying that they don't have time, they're looking for an excuse, and that seems to be one that works, and we know how to disarm that one too. Okay, so the other thing is you're afraid. How would you respond to somebody that says, I'm afraid to get up in front of people?
I personally would would say I understand, because I've been there. And how did I get out of it? Explain how I got out of it, and tell them that basically suggest to them just to come and visit and see what I have learned. You won't get it all in the first time around, but basically I can empathize and sympathize with them because I've been there.
Right? How would you do that, Amy?
Good answer. I would probably say a lot of us were when we got started, including myself. I like to think Toastmastering is probably the safest place in the world to mess up anything like presentation, or with very little or no consequences, and lots of support and encouragement. Specific guidelines for doing it better.
Okay. So yeah, if you're scared, what? You're normal, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what is there to be scared of?
Yeah, that failure and looking silly. Well, that's okay. We are okay with that.
Yeah, well, you're afraid of failing, but more people are afraid of failing in front of other people, right? And
Yes, but then when it comes to that, we're supportive. You know,
Absolutely.
we are supportive. You're not in this alone. We all have had, majority of us have had that issue of being afraid. We had a young lady that ended up going to Georgia, and every single one, she was fearful of speaking. And me and Anthony were coaching her, and I told her, it says, is this the way you talk when you talk with your family? No. And then I said, think about your sister behind, that's in the doorway. Just picture her and not everybody else. Picture her and talk to her. And that kind of helped her along the way. And then she had to move. So I was like, no. But she did join another Toastmasters club in Georgia. And from my understanding, she is doing awesome. And she always, every now and then sends something and say, thank you for all that you did. I mean, if she was young, she was about 21 years old, and I thought I was fearful. Woo! But we worked with her. And if you can work with someone that had that much fear, anyone that has that much fear, to get them to breathe and say a few words, that's just half the mountain.
I remember one person that we had in our group who had been, in an accident of some sort and it had some brain damage. And the
Yeah.
first time he was asked to speak, he spoke for 20 seconds. And most of that was giving his name and the fact that he had brain damage. And when, just before he moved to Chicago, he gave a speech about his trip to Yellowstone Falls. And it was a harrowing trip and a really good speech, but he went for the whole 6 minutes that he'd asked for. And this was like 5.5 minutes longer than he'd ever spoken in one meeting. So the growth we were looking at was completely amazing. He would stand up and his knees would shake so bad that his voice would shake and his hands would get sweaty, and you could tell that all of his notes had been smudged because his hands were so wet. And we were very, very patient with him and worked with him, and we had a good time with him simply because he was a really good guy and he'd had some amazing experiences. But yeah, there's a lot to be afraid of. I mean, being made a fool of, being failing, getting too nervous to speak, all of those things. We're better than a Toastmasters to learn how to do that. How would we relieve their fears?
Tell them for sure it's a safe place to be, but also once we get them at a meeting, make sure someone makes the mistakes so they can see that it's no big deal.
Mhm. I think part of that has to do with our evaluation methods. So somebody gets up there and they get a speech and they says, and now for our evaluation, and people who are afraid of speaking and going, oh my gosh. And then somebody stands up and says, hey, there was really a good topic that you talked about today. I really liked the way that you used your hands and your eyes were so expressive. And the way that you moved from one part of the story to the next was just really good. Oh, and you used the word of the day today. Now, next time, could you put a little bit more emphasis on the descriptions? Maybe that might bring people in. Or maybe if you're worried about forgetting something, write bullet points instead of the whole speech on your note cards. Or practice in front of a mirror, blah, blah, blah. But 1 or 2 things that they offer. And then once again, yeah, it was a great speech. And I'm glad that you got to give that one today. And they're going, oh, well, that wasn't bad. And they clap even if it's an awful speech. Okay, well, But so let's see, what other things would they be afraid of?
Basically just failing and flopping and not being able to finish what they felt like they practiced with.
Mhm.
And I think that we've all been there. I know I sat down and I'm like, oh, I forgot this piece of it. I forgot that piece of it. And a lot of times, those of us that are paying attention don't know that they were forgetting part C, part F, whatever it is. I feel as though we are our worst critics, and we have to let them know that it's okay. If you forgot a part, it's okay. We're not perfect. We're not, 200% in perfection. We are growing, and that's how we grow, is through our bumps and our trials and through all of this. Give it some time and you will see. And then I'm like, okay, did you hear what I just said? I blubbered. And I'm considered a seasoned Toastmaster, and
Yeah.
I blubber, So
I
letting
remember the
them-
worst time I ever flubbed up. I was at the international speech contest for the district, and I got to the last paragraph of my speech and I forgot what it was. Yeah. It was, and the worst part was it was about my dad, and who would know this whole speech about my dad better than me? Because I lived through it and I couldn't remember how it ended. I was so upset. I didn't win. But have you ever run into somebody that was afraid of success?
Yes.
It's one of those things where if I am successful here, why haven't I been successful in my life? What do I have to learn from this? And you can see that that might cause some problems there. So have we learned how to turn no's into yeses tonight?
Ask questions.
Yes. And when we do receive a no, that's on them, not us.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to look at it and say, maybe no means not yet.
Mhm.
So we'll try you next week. Ha! Okay. All right. Well, I will send out this recording as soon as I get it converted, and we can make use of all of this information to help us build our clubs. So spread the word, spread the word. So that
Sounds
is,
good. Thank you.
yeah, that's all for tonight.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All righty. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.